Okay, you're up.
Okay, so a lot of you guys have seen this done before. If you've been with me, you see me do it in an HVAC department. So there's a couple of reasons why I do this, and that's kind of the reason I want to show you why I do what I do. So for instance, right, Bob and I were in this home, primarily Spanish speaking, in Ephraim. Was it Thursday or Friday? Friday. Late Friday night. Right? So one of the things I did is, I think maybe some other guys have been there, don't know, but I diagram a few things out. So again, I keep it simple, and I make some of my own artwork, but before I start looking at equipment with them.
There's a lighting problem. Will you use a different color pen, like green?
What's wrong with black?
I can't see it.
Is that better?
No. Give me just a second. Let me figure out the lighting settings. Okay, there we go. Use the black.
Okay, so in HVAC, the reason why I do this primarily is because a couple different things. Sometimes I know going in, because the age of the house, very good and high likelihood that the furnace needed to be replaced, as well as, especially if it's an AC appointment in there. So that's the complete system. A lot of times we'll want to build the ticket so we can have the whole thing, right? We'd rather sell them a $11,000 or $12,000 job than a $6,000 or $7,000 job. But the point there is, what brought this to my attention one time is when I saw Steve Condy, one of our HVAC techs, do it. Not that great idea, but the reality is sometimes people have misinformed about what a system is and how it all goes together. So, in very simple terms, I've had several customers after I'm done, when I do my post-close, express to me that they really appreciate the fact that I slowed down and I showed them some things, and that built some trust, and that made them understand better where some other people that had been there before did. Okay? Because our competitors are there for literally 15, 20, half an hour. They're leaving an estimate and then they're on their way. And that's their business model. No, by now ours is a little bit different. So, let's start with the furnace, right? I asked them where your furnace is. It's in the basement. Probably your furnace is using an updraft. It's in the basement. It's in a closet upstairs. And I can see that they've got the vents in the basement. They're in the floor. Probably going to be a downdraft, and so I reversed the order. But so furnace, right? I make fun of the fact that every furnace has a blower motor on it. And I'm a crappy artist, but there's the blower motor. So explain to them that they've got some air that comes from a couple of different places in the house, and that's called return air. They're going to call it, cold air return, whatever you want to call it, but we're pulling air from other parts of your house. And this will go into a couple of different explanations, but so over here on your wall, right, you have a thermostat, or maybe they got a little round one with a little dial on it. But thermostat's connected, and this is part of what Andrew was talking about a little bit, right, to your furnace. Your furnace has what's called a heat exchanger in it. You know what? This is where the gas is fired up, and this is what creates heat. So what happens is your furnace is drawing this air, and it's blowing the air across that heat exchanger, and then it takes it up through the ductwork to your house. So in your rooms in your house, you've got the 70-degree air that you're looking for all throughout your house, right? It's a central system. So air conditioning works like this. With air conditioning, what we do is we put something on top of your furnace, and that's called a coil, right? That coil inside of there has two small, they look like radiators, but they're in a teepee, or an A-shaped. They're usually a little bit animated with my hands. And that is filled with refrigerant, just like your car radiator is. It's got some refrigerant or some Freon, we call it. Outside is the part that you're probably most familiar with, and that's the condenser. That's where the compressor is. It too, basically, and around the outside is a radiator. And it's got the fan. And usually by then I get acknowledgement because people know what this is, that they've seen it at their work. They've seen it at their friends' houses, maybe they've had a house before, younger couple, their parents have had it, right? I'll acknowledge a couple of those things. Well, this is connected by 2 copper lines, we call those a line set. So basically what happens in the summertime when you want cold air, your thermostat says, hey, enough heat, we need some cold, and it shuts the gas off on the heat exchanger. But this same blower motor is doing the same thing. It's bringing the air in, and it's pushing the air now across the face of that coil. It's hot air that's coming across there, so it's heating up the coil, and it's heating up the refrigerant, and then it's pumped out to the condenser, which in essence is drawing air through here and blowing it up through here. And it cools it, and it compresses it, and it takes it back into the coil to get more heat and brings it back around. And it's a continuous loop. And that's why you're always going to feel this hot air coming off of here. Okay? The nice part about that, now I've got cold air coming up around all parts of my house. So instead of my living room being 90 degrees, right? Now my living room can be 75 degrees if that's what I want it to be. My bedroom is clear over here. Right down the hall from my swamp cooler can be 72 degrees too, if that's what I'm looking for. Okay? So what we're doing is we're taking the heat out of your house and I'm taking it out here to the outside and I'm dispersing it and I'm bringing it back. But what's really important, here comes the other analogy, right? Airflow. So for instance, if I put a candle between us, you're going to be able to feel that heat coming off that candle, right? Acknowledgement. But if I have an ice cube and I stick it in the middle of us, neither one of us can feel that. I'm going to take that ice cube and almost touch you with it. As a matter of fact, get it really close to your skin before you can feel it. So for air conditioning, I need proper airflow, which means sometimes older furnaces just don't have it down here, right? If you have a 30-year-old furnace, that 30-year-old furnace is worn, it's tired, it doesn't have the airflow. So for this to work properly and get you the airflow, right, sometimes with some of my customers means that we replace the furnace too. The furnace may be producing heat, but I need less airflow for the furnace than I need for my air conditioner. All this time I'm getting tie downs, like they acknowledge that. Yeah, now I see how the two work together, so they're 2 different things. But also what I'm talking about for airflow is I want to make sure I have the same amount of airflow coming out of here as I have coming in. I can't have less coming out than I have coming in. Or I can't have less coming in than I have coming out, right? So this allows me to explain a few different things, and I may refer back to this a couple different times. A couple different times for a few different reasons, right? If they have an old system, and maybe they have air conditioning that works, and it's the condenser that on the outside is bad, then the explanation is already in place when I tell them that's an R22 unit, and that's an R22 unit, right? And they both have to be replaced. Where they're thinking it's just this that has to be replaced. It's a total system. I've got to get the R410A in place. And then they can visualize it and see what I'm talking about. It's just not me telling them what they have to do. Also gives me a chance to talk about airflow. Then it gives me a chance later on to talk about the advantages of the ECM motor, right? The variable speed. And a few other things with the furnace. I can actually talk about, my 2-stage and how that works. But I've kind of put the ground rules together so I can identify the different components. So when I start talking about the fact that, you got a thermostat that you bought at Walmart for $39 last year, and it doesn't have the range, the capacity to run an ECM motor to 2-stage variable speed. Why I'm putting a new thermostat in for it. It just doesn't have the ability to do that. So a whole lot of things that I do with that, but what I've done is I've introduced them to different things so that when the time comes to go look at the equipment, now I can point out this is where your furnace is, remember this is where your blower is, remember this is the coil up here, and I can explain to them why I'm going to make the coil fit the cabinet. Well, if I go down there and I find that I got one that's too small or too big that somebody else built up on, I can explain that one, and I can explain how all this part works. And why I don't want to put this under a deck or in some bushes on the back of their house. Right? They get it, they kind of see how it all works. But I'm laying the ground rules for a few different things here. Okay? Maybe you guys do something similar, and you guys have seen me do it before, but it sets sets up the fact that the furnace needs to be replaced in a lot of cases, how that interacts with the air conditioner. They just think it's magic or some fairy wand that comes in, right, makes cold air. It also explains them taking the heat out, which also allows me to explain after that, right, your air conditioners come in different sizes. They start, we call them in tons, they go from 1.5 ton to a 5 ton, right? And they're in a half-ton increments, so 1.5 to 2, 2.5, up to 4, up to 5. Your house is not going to be 1.5, your house is not going to be 5, right? Probably someplace in between. And that also gives me a chance to kind of pause for a minute, and if they've had somebody else in there, right? Sometimes they'll tell me, oh yeah, the other guy told me it was a 2 ton or 2.5 ton. Well, that tells me, okay, a couple different things, right? They know something, or somebody else has been in there, or they've looked at their equipment and they find out what size it is. It gives you a chance to educate them. And also we get to talk about SEER levels a little bit.
Is this in a compressor in a clear place, what the tonnage is?
What's that?
The old compressor?
Yeah,
Has
little
some
label. Sometimes, most of the time, that label is back behind the wall. And it's about 8 inches, and you can't get your face down there.
Take a picture with your
Camera out. Do a little selfie with your camera, right? Kind of, Rick, you joked about taking a selfie up their thing, right? Then you can show them in the model number, right, that it's got an 8 or a 0 in front of it, and it might be, you know, a number in that sequence, and then another sequence might call out for a, I have another, well, it would be like 036, right? The O meaning a 10 SEER, 36 meaning it's a 3 ton. So this tonnage is divisible by 12,000 BTUs. So that number right there, you divide that by 12, and that gives you your tons. So that's going to be 24, it's going to be 36, it's going to be, what's the next one?
48.
32,
For a
I mean 42.
42 for a 3.5 ton. Right?
Do you say anything if the compressor's only like 8 to 12 inches away from the house to them?
Yeah, gives you a chance to talk about it.
Mention that it should be further out.
You need to suck air in and blow it out, right? It's not doing anybody any service, and also allows them, then they start seeing, okay, I can't put it. And they may be thinking they can stick it up against their wall. I've already established that with that one. So that makes everything else start making sense. And the SEER level mean, you know, if they have an existing air conditioner built before 1990, it's going to be an 8, right? After 2010, up until 2010, everything's going to be a 10. Now, we start talking about 13 SEER, which is today's standard. Well, the reality is, if I'm replacing one for you at 10, right, to 13, I'm automatically giving you an energy efficient upgrade, about 30–35%. So if they don't have air conditioning, then you know what, you get to start at 13%, which is a high efficiency air conditioner, so it's not going to cost you a ton to run this equipment. It also means that if I'm in, you guys have heard this before, it's all kind of like a tape recording sometimes, but if I'm in Tucson, Arizona, for instance, and I'm running my air conditioner 10, 11 months out of the year, I probably want to go as high up that scale, because I go up as high as 19, 21 SEER, right? But I'm price conditioning here, you know, but every SEER level adds about $400 to $500 to the cost of the unit. And then I get a chance to talk about, when I'm talking about the circle and the $100 in there, right, little diagram, the fact that there's a 5% cost savings from here to here. I'm running my air conditioner for 5 months out of the year at the most, and times 5, right? 5 times 5 is 20. I'm saving $25 a year. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go higher up the SEER level to save $25 a year when it's going to cost me $400 more to get there. The reason why I do that is, if you have competitors in there, they're pushing for a higher SEER, right? Customer can, and this is my opinion, right? He can make that choice, but what I'm trying to do is keep me from competing with the guy that came in there and said, let's get you a 16 SEER, or get you a $50 rebate from Rocky Mountain Power. I can't get that $50 rebate. Right? You can't get that $50 rebate, or $150, whatever it might be. It's not worth it. So a lot of times I'm capping them off here. But I'll work on that when we talking about the furnace a little bit, and the fact that that furnace has an ECM motor, right? That's a +1 SEER. If you have an ECM motor. So if I'm installing a new furnace with them and I put a 13 SEER, they're actually getting a 14 SEER AC for the cost of a 13 SEER. So you guys kind of see how I set the rules. I just kind of set the the groundwork there, right? Nothing new. But the point there is, if you get pretty good at the diagram, you can explain how that works. That also allows you to explain how the two-stage works, how the ECM works, the variable speed, and you've got the whole principle of the airflow going. You can see the bigger picture. So we do have a graph in the system, but it's a little bit further down the road. But to get them involved, right, this is the first thing, one of the first things you're going to do, just to they're not dragging me down to the furnace and the air conditioner, but also sets up the need for a new furnace in a lot of cases, right? Do you do something similar? Andy, you do something similar? Right?
I just haven't had very many needs actually.
Yeah. So that's pretty much how I set it up. I don't know if I'm missing anything, right? But kind of where the components are, vice versa, right? If it's a downdraft, I'm building my drying to go the other way, right? With the coil down below, and the blower up here, and everything coming down that way. Just so I can explain to them how theirs work, how that work comes down into the floor.
I was gonna say that the one I went on with you, she had a clip out for a deal for like 2,500, and it was way under. It was under, if you remember. He had done it for like a 2 ton or 2.5 ton. Remember her son?
Okay, so when do you use this?
When?
Almost every time I do.
No, at what point in the appointment do you use this?
I've done the warm-up. I started asking about some questions, right? Before I launch into, it'd be okay to do it after the company starts. I do it early on when I'm sitting with them, wherever I'm at, after my warm-up.
Okay.
It opens a gateway for me to open up into the HVAC world, get them engaged in that, and allows me to move on to the company story.
So prior to going down and measuring the furnace,
Way before.
okay, so but after your warm-up, after your initial survey questions, now you're starting to dig into what are the needs, why am I here? Let's see where you're at education-wise and make sure we're all on the same page.
But it also allows me to branch off of that, always refer back to it. If they have one room that's colder or hotter than the other, and it's usually a teenager's room because the door is shut, right? They always bring that up. Is that a teenager's room? Oh yeah, how'd you know? Teenagers are going to close the room. But can you see? In that room, if I'm bringing air in, I got to take air out. So I can't put any cold air in there if I can't get any hot air out, or vice versa. Oh yeah, keep that door open now, right? So I'm solving a problem.